And welcome to Executive Zen. I'm Dr. Steve Taubman, your host. We're 29 weeks into our show, and we're relatively new here on Facebook, though. This is the new edition. It's the video piece. But thanks to all of you for commenting and sharing the show, and I hope you'll continue to do so. We're enjoying the Facebook element of this thing, although we've been working out our glitches. But feel free to jump in since this is a live broadcast. If you'd like to make comments, you can do that in real time. And of course, your input's valuable. We like hearing from you, and we want to make it the best possible show. So if you've got a question, feel free to jump in with that. Today, we're going to be talking about managing stress. One of my favorite topics, a topic that I talk a lot about. And my guest today, who I'll be introducing shortly, is one of the world's leading experts in that area. So I'm very excited. Now, I want to remind you all that this show is called Executive Zen, and the subtitle is To Lead Consciously and Profit Responsibly. So, when I think about leading consciously, maybe a lot of people don't necessarily know what that means. So let me say it this way. Leading consciously means being awake, aware, present, and on top of your game while you're leading, so that you're fully present, your resources are there, you're aware of the conversations you're having and the challenges you're facing. You're doing so in a way that is not judgmental, but you're open. You're just letting things unfold in a way where you come to the fore, where you've got your very best self forward. And that, of course, has all sorts of implications in terms of our leadership. And people who don't lead consciously are people we might say that lead automatically, people who just kind of show up and they do whatever they feel like doing, and they're not necessarily aware of their biases or their level of presence. And the danger of leading in that way is that we have a tendency to miss opportunities. We have a tendency to alienate others. And in many, many ways, we end up causing ourselves and everybody around us a whole lot more stress. When you're not present, then stress becomes a much more obvious occurrence. So that's why this is so important. We talk a lot about mindfulness and about being present. And my background in this area of stress research goes back to my days as a chiropractor. And when I was in my chiropractic practice, we studied physiology. We studied the work of Hans Selye, who was considered the father of stress research. And Selye, and by the way, I'm going to be asking Heidi to comment on everything I say after I get her on air here. I'm sure she's got a lot more to say about it than I do. But this idea that stress affects us the same way, regardless of whether it comes from it's a physical stress, a mental stress, an emotional stress. All stresses affect us physiologically in the same way. And he described something called the general adaptive syndrome. That is, it causes an inflammation of your adrenal glands and all sorts of other glands, a release of certain kinds of neurohormones, and a change in blood pressure, change in pulse rate, et cetera, et cetera. And that he did a lot of research on animals and then on humans about how stress affects us. So there's a whole physiological side to this conversation. But then there's also a very practical side to this conversation, which is how does stress affect us in our work? How can we recognize the presence of stressors and make the distinction between good stress and bad stress? We'll talk a lot about that today. Can we, as conscious human beings, begin to realize that our stress doesn't come from our circumstances, but from how we think about our circumstances? That, to me, is one of the most important distinctions. We think that people cut me off in traffic and therefore I've got to experience stress. That's not true. Things happen, and then we get to choose how we respond to them, or at least theoretically we get to choose that. As we become more conscious, more self-aware, more masterful of our own mental state, we can then decide which of the suggestions that are being made by our circumstances that we choose to accept and visualize negatively versus reject and maybe shift to a more positive point of view. So those are all the kinds of things I want to talk about today. And let me say that before I introduce my guest, I'm very excited about today's show. This is somebody I really love and appreciate. And we speak the same language. I think she probably does it better than I do and has a lot of amazing and remarkable things to say. But I think one of the defining features of the way I present is that I try to do it without a whole lot of pretense or cockiness, or I think I try to do it in a very authentic way, and there's humor in what I'm saying. And that's so one of the things that I love about the person I'm about to introduce you to is that this is true of her too. She's brilliant, but she's also authentic, and she'll be the first to tell you about her stressful experiences in life. So what that means to me is that everything you're going to learn today is accessible. We're not speaking from a lofty perch, but rather we're speaking from the trenches about how life affects us, how it affects our minds, our emotions, our physiology, our productivity, and all that sort of thing. So having said all that, I don't want to keep her waiting any longer, so I'm going to introduce you to my guest today. So my guest is Heidi Hanna. And Dr. Heidi Hanna, PhD, is the Chief Executive Officer of Synergy, a company providing brain-based health and performance programs to individuals and organizations. Heidi's also the Executive Director of the American Institute of Stress and a founding partner of the Academy of Brain Health and Performance. Heidi is a New York Times bestselling author of several books, including The Sharp Solution, Stressaholic, and Recharge. She's been featured in many global conferences, including Fortune Magazine's Most Powerful Women in Business Summit, ESPN Leadership Summit, and the $1 Million Roundtable. Her clients have included Google, Starbucks, Microsoft, Morgan Stanley, and WD-40. I was going to make a joke, but I'm not going to. As well as the PGA Tour and the National Football League. Heidi's also a certified humor professional with the Association of Applied and Therapeutic Humor, although she won't admit that she's funny, but she is. And her newest book, What's So Funny About Stress, will be released this fall. Now, on a personal note, before I jump in with Heidi, I want to say that I had the good fortune of meeting Heidi in a beautiful place in Cancun, or close by Cancun, when we were both speaking at the Happiness Vacation Hour a few years ago. And we were both sharing the stage for that event. And I got to spend a bit of time with Heidi, both on and off stage, and was just delighted. And then since then, we've had a few chances to meet up in San Diego, and got to meet her wonderful husband. And anyway, I can't say enough of wonderful things about Heidi, so I want to bring her on board here and let you meet her for yourself. So here we go. Heidi, hello.
Am I here? Am I
You're
on?
here.
Is this thing on?
You're on. Am I here? Do you hear me? So,
awesome,
yeah.
Awesome. It's so fun listening to you talk. And now all the memories of Cancun and that vacation hour come flooding back, and why we enjoyed talking so much about all of this stuff. So
right?
It's great to be here.
Yeah, yeah. And we've both, since then, we've got a few miles under our belt. I know you've done a lot of traveling. And have you been anywhere interesting lately?
Ooh, interesting lately. Gosh, my husband's on the broadcast right now. He could probably tell you better than I can, because my brain is so fried at the moment.
Hi, John.
You know where I am right now that's really interesting is I'm home. And I find that really interesting. And I love that I chose to live in a place that I would choose. Like that was really intentional for me moving to San Diego.
Yeah. Yeah. I love San Diego. As a lot of people know, I live in Burlington, Vermont, which is a stunning and beautiful place. But we have winter, and we have a pretty strong, intense winter, and maybe a little longer than I'd like it to be. So last year I spent a couple months in San Diego, and I'll be doing it again this year. In all likelihood.
It is a special place. Yeah. So I grew up in Portland, Oregon. So I had my share of long, rainy, dark winters. Went to college in Pennsylvania, so I didn't get away from it very quickly. Then I lived in Florida for 10 years because I thought the weather would be better. Turns out it's pretty wet there too. And was working with a client in San Diego, and eventually just decided to stay here. And it's been a good place for me. Not the easiest to get in and out of, but I also share that because I remember being very intentional about where do I want to live that's going to give me the type of energy that I need to go do the work that I want to do. Because I think that that's really important. And obviously not everybody can make choices maybe as big as where they're going to live, but I think we all can make more choices than we realize to really build up our own capacity to cope with the challenges in our life.
So what you're talking about is that, sometimes we think that life doesn't give us a lot of choices, but we've probably got more than we realize. And when we seize that, when we don't automatically say, oh, I'm doomed, things are terrible, my life stinks, then maybe we get to take control a little bit. We're empowered.
Yeah. And I think it's it's about the oscillation and the rhythm and the patterns. We talk a lot about work-life balance. So even as I was listening to you in the introduction talking about stress, and Hans Selye, who actually started the American Institute of Stress, I've been reading his books for a long time, and it's actually really fun to go back and read some of his old stuff and how really on the mark he was with things that we're now coming back around to now that we have more kind of advances in science and technology. So that's a lot of fun. But I was listening to your definition, and we really have kind of evolved now to a new working definition of stress, that stress is what happens when demand exceeds capacity. And so a lot of us naturally focus on the demands, the circumstances, the things we have no control over. And when the brain is really focused on that, it's incredibly stressful. It's chronic long-term stress, and that's very different from the shorter-term acute stress that we can actually grow from. And so I say that because, yes, demand is a part of that equation, but the part that we tend to have most control is really around our capacity. And most of the capacity building elements are common sense things that aren't common practice, like how we eat, how often we move, how we sleep. Picking up and literally moving yourself to another state is not always very easy for people. But sometimes it's like getting a better pillow, or listening to a different music station that's intentional, or turning the noise off. There's a lot of like micro shifts that we can make that over time really seriously impact our capacity in each moment. And I think that's a lot of what you're talking about too, is being conscious and making choices instead of being reactive.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this interesting analogy. Like my background is chiropractic. I had a chiropractic practice for many years, and in my chiropractic practice, one of the philosophical distinctions between chiropractic and allopathic medicine, or holistic medicine and allopathic medicine, is that in holistic medicine we talk about let's take the germ theory, for example, right? Like germs cause disease. Well, the holistic physician would say, no, germs don't cause disease. It's your lack of resistance to them that causes the disease. That if you can increase your resistance, then you could be in the presence of the very same germs that somebody else might get sick from, but you've got better resistance, right? And
it's always an environment that either feeds the stimulation or fights it, right? So you could say the same with weight management. A lot of people struggle with weight management because they think it's literally calories in, calories out. But it's not. I can't remember the exact quote she uses, but my friend JJ Virgin talked about this so long ago and got a lot of pushback, that it's not an equation, it's not a formula, it's a chemistry lab, right? So it's how everything interacts with each other and the environment that potential inflammatory issue, even life events. Like, what is the environment that a challenge enters into in your life to either become stress the way we think of stress, being spread too thin, not having enough capacity to cope, or being challenge stress that now gives us energy and information that we say, okay, I'm going to learn from this and I'm going to turn that into something positive. Because even things like exercising or getting a flu shot are stressful, and then how we react to that allows us to become stronger the next time we try to have that sort of challenge. So I know that a lot of what we're talking about, people are like, yeah, that totally makes sense, that's common sense. But what I think people really need to realize is, what does that mean then for each person individually? What is your environment, mentally, physically, spiritually, socially, that the challenges in life are coming into, and where can you make those micro shifts to make it better, to be more resilient?
Yeah, so that's what I hear. I hear number one is like, what are you thinking, and how are you living your life? It's great to talk about this theoretically, but like if you're actually experiencing chronic stress, like that kind of diminished capacity as a result of maybe the additive effect, right? There's an additive effect when you just keep on getting stressed and stressed and stressed, and you never get to recover. Right. And a lot of people are living their lives that way. They're living their lives with, one challenge after another without ever having built in any kind of recovery time.
Right. Yeah. Let me give you a perfect example. So I have now assessed over 20,000 people. We have something called the Stress 360 survey, and it looks at lifestyle patterns, and people can take it for free. It's easy to do, but essentially it gives you kind of an idea of what your demand versus capacity is in the moment. And then that helps you figure out what needs to change. Okay. So I put that out there. We've had over 20,000 people take it. The things we hear most about in the stress world tend to be things like finances, relationships, things like that. But the number one most common stressor is feeling like you don't have enough time to get it all done. Okay. I'm sure a lot of people are listening going, yeah, that's me. I mean, I get that. You wake up and you feel like there's not enough time to get it all done, which then adds to everything else. So my question for people then is, so what do you do with that? So if you wake up and the first thing you think is, I don't have enough time to get it all done, how do you adjust that? Because most people, what they do is they jump on their phone, they check their email, they watch the news. Is any of that telling you that you now have more time to get things done? Probably not. Right. It's probably making it worse. And you have now hijacked your brain from the time you get up in the morning to the time you try to fall asleep, toss and turn, tired and wired because you're worried about not having enough time tomorrow. So that may seem like a small thing, but in that moment, when you have that thought, what is a pivot that can give you more capacity? And you know, there's so many things. It could be listening to music. It could be finding something funny, meditation, inspirational reading. There's exercising, going for a walk, just taking a few deep breaths. There's so many shifts you can make that then tell the brain, now you haven't gotten more time, but now the brain is more focused on what's most important. You've built some capacity to deal with the challenge of time. You've got more clarity, more confidence. You have actually changed the lens through which you see your stress to be more resilient. And that to me, like, that's where the magic is, because we're not going to get more than 24 hours in a day, no matter how much people say, hustle this and hack that. It's like, no, heal yourself, fuel yourself, and then you can deal with that more effectively. It's such a small thing, but it can make a huge difference for people.
And it's a paradigm shift for people because, you know, when you're a busy person, the last thing you want to do is to take time out of your busy schedule to do something that isn't directly related to the thing you're doing. But what you and I both find again and again is that by taking maybe those mini vacations or getting that music or having a moment of astonishment or humor or laughter, it may not be the thing you were trying to get done, but it makes you so much more healthier and happier and more productive when you build those things in.
And please, everybody know that just because we're talking about this doesn't mean that we do this every single time that thought happens.
Oh, I do. No, I'm perfect. I forgot to mention.
We fight this. And again, my husband's on, so I know that I can't totally lie here.
Can't get away with lying about that.
I went for a very long run today. I came back. I thought, you know, I really need to meditate. So I have 3 things I do every day. I move, I meditate, and I mirth. And as you know, mirth is another word for humor. It's the emotional type of humor that we experience when we're amused. So to me, those 3 things are more important than taking medication. So I did my long run. I had my moment of mirth. I didn't meditate yet. And I remember kind of catching myself and thinking, like, I was kind of justifying, well, I laid in bed a little longer this morning, so I could kind of call that meditation, or like the run was really long. The fact is, we know we're better when we do those things. And the reactionary part of the brain that feels hijacked by the time pressure is always going to give us the best excuse to say, you don't need it, don't worry about it today, start again tomorrow. And it's really the importance, I think, of that commitment to yourself, and probably even more so commitment to someone else. Like if I say to my stress mastery community, this month, this is what I'm going to work on, and I go into a group platform where I check a box and everyone sees that I've done it, I did it 100% of the days last month, because I will not let them down. But guess what? I'll let myself down. I'll talk myself out of it in an instant, right?
We're so much less accountable to ourselves than we are to others. And it's unfortunate, but it's great to know, because then we could build strategies that kind of put us out in the public eye. So it's like,
don't beat yourself up. Don't beat yourself up. Don't think that we've got it perfect. We're just 2 people having a conversation saying, you know what, this is what I've learned. Here's the patterns I've learned to make better. And you mentioned in the beginning, I mean, part of why I'm so passionate about this is stress, anxiety, depression has been kind of my life story for a very long time. So I feel like I don't really have a choice. So I either have to do this, or like I almost can't even think about what my life would be like if I didn't. So that's become kind of part of my story. I would love for other people who are watching this to think about that as well. How could you make self-care part of your non-negotiable strategy? Like self-care should be part of your non-negotiable success strategy for every leader. And knowing that you're focusing on leaders here, if you are leading other people, you better be showing up with energy that says, I have the capacity to cope with the challenges that we are facing. It doesn't mean the challenges are going to go away. It means I can bring to the space and time that we're together capacity to cope, and I'm going to help all of us navigate those challenges more effectively. And we have to have energy to do that. It's not about time as much as it is the energy we bring to the time that we have. Super important.
Well said. Oh, totally. I heard Tony Robbins doing an interview just earlier today where he said, if you can't give yourself 10 minutes just for yourself, you have no life. Very definitive. I mean, that's really, it's interesting. If you can't give yourself 10 minutes as a gift to yourself, to replenish yourself, to quiet yourself, I subscribe to the calm in the eye of the storm philosophy, right? I want to be, I know there's a storm brewing out there. I know I'm going to go into it every day, but can I be the calm in the eye of it?
Yeah. And I would say if it's difficult for you to say, I'm going to gift myself, especially, and I don't know the demographics of the people who listen and watch your show, but I can say that women in particular really struggle with the idea of taking care of ourselves. We think it's selfish. So one of the things I really encourage people to do is you have to rewrite your story around the fact that you literally can only serve from a cup that has capacity. You have to put your oxygen mask on first. Everybody knows that, but it has to become a non-negotiable so that you genuinely believe when I go for a run, I am making myself better for my husband, and not from the standpoint of like, hopefully, you know, staying in shape. I mean, from a brain perspective, from a kindness perspective, I'm a better person when I do what I have to do to make sure I have the capacity. Otherwise, when I don't, and he knows this, at the end of the day, I'm not a lot of fun to be around. So I don't want to be that person. But you have to like make that connection to really believe that I'm going to go do this thing, even things like a massage. Maybe a run is too extreme. Like I get a massage once a week. I have to book it right when we finish this for this week. And even when I do that, a lot of people would say, well, that's so easy. That's so wonderful. I can't tell you how many times I want to cancel the massage because I got so much stuff I'd rather do. But it's a commitment, because when I go do that, I'm better able to then get up on stage and speak and connect with people. Or I'm better able to, you know, just connect with people on a daily basis. The self-care stuff is so critical. Sorry, I'm on a total soapbox here about this, but I want people to, like, I need this to sink in for people, because everything we talk about is just going to be a good idea until people rewrite their story about it.
And let me just add an element to this, because I love what you're saying. You know, hopefully most people hear this, and it just makes good common sense that, you know, that if I don't take care of myself, I can't really take care of anybody else. That's just common sense.
Right.
But in the trenches, in the moment, like you said, you know, the moment you're about to go for your massage, you could easily justify to yourself that there's too much to do. And so one of the challenges I think that you and I face in helping people to orchestrate a new way of doing their lives is that, and you alluded to this before, I've got a great quote for you. I forgot who said it. I think it was, might have been Gurdjieff, but he said, the ego will always try to convince you that whatever you're thinking is vitally important. And you've got to be thinking it now, right?
Yeah.
So there's this element of mindfulness, this element of like starting to develop the ability to notice how your mind is taking you down these blind alleys and not be so swept up by it. You are not your brain. You are not your thoughts. So when they start taking you down those alleys, you're like, whoa, wait a minute. I know better, right? Yeah. I sense that I really need to be thinking this. I really need to be doing this. That's what everything is telling me I need to do. But no, because wisdom has to trump obsession.
Right. So let's talk about that for a second, because I think you hit on a super important point. I don't know how much we want to go into this, so I will let people know if you want to hear more about this and we don't talk about it. This is the whole point of the TED Talk I just did, which you were at, by the way, I remember, with your dog, Woody, is this, and I even have a little visual for you here. This is the monkey. This is the monkey mind. We know that the monkey mind exists as the primal part of our brain as well. Now, when I squeeze this little monkey, his heart pops out, reminds me to actually, this one's a little deflated. He's a little stressed out. So reminds me to lead with my heart instead of my brain sometimes, because to your point, the brain is going to fire these signals to oftentimes hijack us for survival purposes. And that's the primal part of the brain. And so for me, when I catch myself, I call it catching the monkey. So I catch the monkey mind starting to pull me off track. And then I recognize that it is the monkey mind. This is not Heidi's soul and my deeper purpose and commitment to something bigger than myself. This is me getting stuck in survival patterns. So I don't have to beat myself up over that. I don't have to blame or shame myself. I just go, monkey mind. And I, if I have my Melvin monkey next to me, I'll squeeze him, give him a little love. Thank you for trying to protect me, but we're good. I'm going to stay focused on this kind of bigger picture, deeper consciousness, right, type of thing. So whatever works for people. I think you can even do the same if you're with somebody that you love and trust. I hope my husband has left by now when I say this, but
squeeze them until their heart pops out.
What's that?
That's what you do with them. You squeeze.
Yeah, squeeze until his heart pops out. No, please don't do that. No, but you can nudge people. You can remind people, right? Like if I was acting out and my husband said, "Ooh, your monkey brain's taken off," or I'm not sure I would do that. But there's other ways that you can shift those types of situations. He does know that humor works really well for me. He knows getting outside and going for a walk works really well for me. So it's like sometimes when we're in those reaction patterns, if we have someone with us that they can just you just have to break the pattern to get back to where we are. And again, as leaders, we have to break the pattern for ourselves, know how to do that. And we can really help other people break the pattern. As you get to know the people you're trying to lead, you can find what those non-conscious cues are going to be to help them shift. And this is where I say you can shift stress fast. It's not about getting rid of the stress or the problem. It's about changing from the monkey brain into the human brain. And that is not usually a logical process. That's a bottom-up sensory process. So it requires moving our body, getting some fresh air. It's why I love aromatherapy, because I can smell the aromatherapy. It changes my physiological state that then brings the blood flow literally back online from being stuck in the monkey part of the brain to expanding into the human part of the brain. And this is where consciousness and choices and responses come from. So we're not reacting, we're responding. But that's, hopefully people are here. There's a pattern shift that has to happen. I think most people think of stress management as like, I'm going to think differently or I'm going to do things differently. And just understand that when stress is hijacking you, you're not thinking, you're reacting. So you've got to shift that pattern first, ideally in some sort of sensory state like movement, smelling something, listening to something. That's why music's really powerful. And then as the brain starts to come back online, you can navigate the conscious part of your brain more effectively. I hope that makes sense.
So I'll tell you my quote on that. I say, fix the mood before you fix the mess.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I'm going to quote you on that.
Yeah. Well, I'll say it on your show tomorrow. How's that?
Okay. Perfect.
We'll have to talk about that. But yeah, we think that we could think our way out of the state we're in. But in fact, what we can do is we can transform the state, and then our thinking becomes more resourceful, and then we could find the thoughts that are necessary. And as you kind of alluded to, one of the ways is to get out of your head and into your body, into your senses. Smell, taste, touch, anything other than think.
Yeah.
Could we talk a little bit about how this, because you're the ultimate expert on this, in terms of how it affects business? How does it affect productivity in business? What happens when this becomes a priority in a company?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And that's one of my favorite things to talk about. Yeah. I believe the cure for stress meaning we're not getting rid of stress. We actually want stress. Stress is good. I say stressing is a blessing once you know how to use it for good. That's very important. So we don't want to get rid of it. But the stress epidemic, I believe the only way we're going to change that is through organizations, because organizations are systems, they're communities, there's vision, values, purpose wrapped up into an organization. So I spend a lot of time working with companies to create full-blown, what I call enterprise resilience programs. So not resilience just in health and wellness, not resilience just in training and development, but I mean down to the sales, marketing, branding, PR, everything. And it's a lot of fun because it's kind of like a game to figure out how can you make this fit into an organizational structure. I always require that we start with the leaders, because the leaders are the ambassadors, and it's what everybody's watching to see, can we actually do that? So let me give you an example. I worked with a client. They have napping pods at their company, and everyone thought that's super cool. I thought it was super cool too. They have napping pods. They have free food. They have daycare. I mean, it was like, this is where everyone wants to work. And so I started asking people about that. And the perception was, they give us this so we won't leave. Like, they're expecting us to work 24/7, so much so they don't want us to leave to go get food. They don't want us to leave to go get rest. They don't want us to leave to go pick up our kids. And it was the first time that I realized that you can add all of these different interventions, but if it's not connecting with your culture and what your tribe really wants. I mean, you left at WD-40. I got to tell you, they're one of my favorite clients right now. We're working on this whole massive initiative. And I thought, okay, they have a resilience product. They should be a resilience tribe. We had the best time last week. I did an event for their global leadership. I mean, it was awesome. Just a big love fest.
There's probably not a lot of friction there.
Not a lot of friction. That's true. It's not just the product. It's like they want to be that, right? They want to be a tribe of just love. And it was awesome. So those are fun companies to work with. Now, I'm going to talk about what people are doing well and the positive impact. And then I want to talk about some of the challenges. So I mentioned the challenge of, like, you can give people a fitness center, you can get them free food, you can get them massages, all that kind of stuff. If that's not what they want, and here's another massive disconnect, if the leaders aren't doing it themselves, my gosh, so many companies say, we want to have meditation and we want to have workouts. And it's like, where are the leaders? Oh, they're too busy. If they're not taking the time and investing in the self-care strategies where their employees can actually see them doing it, it's not going to work, because the perception is, if I want to be them, if I want to advance my career, it's like I have to kill myself to get there. I have to prove that, I'm here 24/7. I have to respond to every single text or call within 5 seconds. I mean, it gives me heart palpitations just thinking about it. That is not sustainable at all. And we know that because we can read the books about it. So what does that actually then look like? It means leaders have to do what it takes to show up with that energy in the time that they have. And you actually start to shift away from a time management focus to an energy management focus. That's number one, which means shorter meetings, shorter calls, not expecting people to be constantly connected, get people up and moving, be mindful about how you plan meetings. There's like death by meetings happening today. There's meetings about the meeting, And what a lot of leaders don't realize, if you have employees in a meeting and they're forced to sit there and they're not really being involved or included, they're not getting a chance to speak up or participate, they shouldn't be there. Because the brain, the ego, whatever you want to say, the primal part of the brain is saying the whole time, why am I even here right now? Now add multitasking, which is a massive issue. So now you've got a meeting about a meeting about a meeting with a bunch of people that don't need to be there, and they're all doing something else. You're right. The energy in the room is so fractured and distracted that it's disrupting everybody. And we know that stress is highly contagious. So if you're in a room and one person walks in and they're feeling stressed, they non-consciously are giving away all sorts of information about that, from their heart rate to their breathing patterns to the tone of their voice. That gets picked up. And regardless of what the actual issue is, everyone starts to produce more cortisol, more adrenaline, more inflammatory markers, because they're going, I don't know what this person's stressed about, but they're in my tribe and I should probably be stressed and I should probably shift to self-protection too. So this massive contagion effect. That said, positively, the good stuff's contagious too. So when you show up, especially as a leader, and you show up with confidence and clarity, and remember, I'm not saying there's no challenges. In fact, you need to communicate the challenges just as much, because if you hold those back, everyone else is assuming the worst and they want to know why they're not being included to the conversation. But there's a confidence in taking care of yourself, showing up and being focused, slowing down your role a little bit, even adding things like humor and play and amusement in a way that really fits your culture. It's what I call the power lead. So now, instead of starting with, okay, we gotta go and we're late from this meeting and we're going to be late to that meeting and we've got a long agenda and tons to do, which totally stresses everybody out, you start the meeting by showing a funny video or having people share something funny that happened to them today. It could be literally 30 seconds, but you have shifted their brain to be in a state of calm so that they can focus and actually get more done in less time. And you set very clear, firm boundaries around time. If the meeting is 40 minutes, 45 minutes, it ends when it's supposed to end. And if you have to schedule another meeting, that's fine, but don't run over, because again, that just one thing goes too long, goes too long, goes too long, goes too long. People have to know what is the container for their time and their energy. Yeah, that's a lot to think about. I realize you can also create some organizational recharge rituals, things like 50-minute meetings, 25-minute phone calls, having an alarm, not an alarm that's alerting, but like a music or something kind of zen that tells everybody when it's 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock, everyone takes a 15-minute recharge break. I mean, there's things patterns you can create within the organizational system that, again, may seem really small, but if everybody's on board and the tribe is doing it together, it can have massive benefit. And I want to say just one last thing, and then I'm going to stop and take a breath. Amazing research from my friend Bruce McEwen at Rockefeller University. He is the guru of all of the cortisol, hippocampus research. And he discovered, I believe it was him, I know it was he was the one that told me about it, that cortisol, by the way, is not a bad thing. Everyone thinks it's bad. It's actually really important. And when you experience trauma and you have enough cortisol right after, it actually minimizes PTSD. So it is a healing factor. The problem is when we produce it all the time, we stop responding to it. That's the problem. But he actually found that when you have cortisol and oxytocin, the bonding chemical, at the same time, it causes neurogenesis, it causes brain cell growth. And there's only a couple of things that actually do that. So stress with people you feel connected to is actually very enhancing. I gave myself goosebumps. That's always a sign I'm saying something really important. Stress, when we feel connected, when we feel like we're on a purpose that matters and there's other people with us, when we have a tribe, it's one of the best things we can actually do for ourselves. So we don't want to shy away from it. We just need that capacity. We need to be in it together. And I think that's a big thing we need to be talking about, especially for leaders. If only I was passionate about this.
Me too. I love everything you're saying. One of the things I do is close-up magic, right? Like you see little magic tricks. And back earlier in my career, I do it in restaurants. So I'd go up to a table. I always loved when they would say, stay away from table 15. They're a pain in the ass, right? Oh, and that would be the first place I would go, because nobody's a pain in the ass, endemically. They just happen to be in a bad mood. But it's amazing how quickly something like a magic trick can turn somebody, a bunch of grumpy people into joyful kids. And I thought of that when you were talking about starting a meeting with something, just something that breaks the pattern, something funny, something astonishing. There's research about astonishment as how that improves productivity. And I also really wanted to highlight, you brought up the thing about time integrity, like start the meeting on time, end the meeting on time. How often does that happen? And what degree of stress does that cause when you know, like, it's 10 minutes late, it's 15 minutes late, is this thing going to ever end? Nobody's going to say when it's about to end. So I'm just sort of stuck with the anguish of the whole experience.
Yeah, and you know what I'm realizing even as you're saying that is what that's really tapping into, even more than capacity, is control. And one of the biggest elements around our personal relationship with stress is our perception of control. And it's not that we have to control everything, but what happens in a meeting when you've told me that this is going to go for 45 minutes and it's 48 minutes and it's 52 minutes or whatever it might be, I start feeling trapped. I already have other things I know I need to do. Now you're taking away, so you're taking something away from me. You weren't honest with me about how long this is going to be. And for leaders, it's in my opinion, at least, it's one of the signs that you're not good at leading, because if you're leading people, there should be integrity around those boundaries of things like time and energy, because it's really not just time. It's, I'm going to give you my best energy for the time frame that we have. And the only way I can do that is if I can go recharge my energy. Most people today can't go to the bathroom without being on their phone because they have to be checking in and scrolling. I just posted a poll about that on Facebook today. How many of you, honestly, and the reason I posted it was because I had to go to the bathroom and I went to get my phone because I figured I might as well get rid of I was like, why? Why do I have to have my phone when I go to the bathroom? Maybe this is easier for women than men. We don't need to get into all that. But the point is, we don't always have to be doing something.
That right there. I mean, if everybody could just like learn, I don't always have to be doing something, that would be a major, massive shift in life all the way around, because we are addicted to stimulus.
For sure.
And we have this sort of vague, unconsidered sense of oppression. We're oppressed by time. We're oppressed by our activities. We're oppressed by, the demands and obligations that we have. So there's like, it's always kind of there in the background, which is why, like, I love talking about mindfulness, because it's like when you start realizing the stuff that's actually impacting your brain at every one moment. Like when you woke up to the fact that, I don't need to bring my phone with me into the bathroom. When my friends were having a fight and I was aggravated, but I went and I took a shower and I realized halfway through the shower that I was actually in the shower. Right. Because my brain was back at the fight they were having. I wasn't where I was. And so be here now. Yeah. And all the things you're talking about are ways of being here now.
And the more you do it, I have to say, it can be challenging. It can feel lonely. Like if you're really fully showing up in your life, you start to realize how many people don't. That said, my awesome husband, it took me a very long time to decide that I could actually be with someone and not drive them totally crazy. So I'm very recently married. But, I'm a bit of a nag. This is the one thing I'm a bit of a nag about, is he will pick up his phone and start looking at something. And if he should be able to do that, like, I'm sure I do that many of times. But there's times where it's like, is there something that's important? Like, I'm not going to stop him from doing something that's important, but I just catch so many people just intuitively, instinctively, just grabbing it because you're in the car and there's nothing else to do. And I don't even like I don't have the radio on in the car. I don't even need to be talking. Sometimes I just want to be here now. Like, can we just be present and not have to be trying to get through, 5 more emails real quick because we have a moment. And then that's hard when you're really committed to doing that and other people aren't. I think it can be hard, which is also why I think it's helpful to at least have a support system around you that says, I want to do this too.
Yeah, like you said, it's contagious. I mean, if somebody is dropped into the middle of a bunch of very agitated people and that person's pretty firm in their practices, then they can start to have an impact on other people. Like why is Heidi calm? Why is Heidi smiling when everybody else is going crazy? Why doesn't she feel like she needs to pick up all this stuff and do all these things? So the opportunity is there. Before we start getting ready to wrap up, can you share a couple of success stories about how this kind of technology has helped companies to be more effective, more productive, or maybe that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's funny. I really stumbled into this work, and only now, within the last couple of weeks, have I realized the success stories that I have, because I have a tendency, I've never done a lot of promotion. I was really fortunate to work with a company in Orlando called the Human Performance Institute. I worked there for almost 10 years. My two biggest fears were flying and public speaking, and I ended up doing both, which was totally stressing me out. I was getting sicker and sicker as I was getting more successful kind of on the surface. And then my third grandparent was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and I really freaked out thinking about the health of my own brain. That's kind of like the short version of my story. So I started kind of stumbling into this work with companies. And now I can look back, and I've had some really powerful experiences. One was a company in Detroit. It was an energy company, a utilities company. And I went in and consulted with them for a while. And we basically built what I'm talking about now. I just didn't really realize it. We took their health and wellness program and turned it into a high energy health program. And it started to become about the energy you bring to the time that you have. So we integrated nutrition and fitness and sleep, and then integrated positive psychology strategies. But then we also had some ambassadors. We also took it out to the community, and they ended up winning a big award that year, which I didn't find out about till later. I mean, because I just don't really keep track about having this innovative kind of health and wellness programming. And that was awesome. It was such a great success story to see that we piloted this with a small group of people. And then as soon as that rolled out, we took it immediately to senior leadership. The C-suite went through it themselves. All of them spent like a day and a half with me to make sure the message to working with business leaders and entrepreneurs and people like that. And I would say at this point, the thing I'm most excited about, I'm working with a brand, a global brand, actually Reef, which is a footwear. They're mostly known for flip-flops. They got some great flip-flops. They're here in San Diego. And similarly, we put together a kind of stress mastery program that's being used internally. But the thing I love about what we're doing together is we're building it into their brand. So they're actually now taking this idea of recharging your energy. I even created a Reef Recharge, specific 4 steps that go with the it's like so much fun to be creative about that stuff, so that their marketing, their PR, their media, and their president was in the room when I did a recharge workshop for their employees first. They bought into it. And now we're doing a full media campaign next year. They're actually building it into their entire marketing strategy. I mean, it's like, to me, those are the organizations that are going to do this right. They're going to see that not only is this going to help our internal tribe, not just on healthcare costs, not just on stress management, but we're going to take this, we're going to own it, we're going to build it into who we are as a brand. Because now if you show up to work there and that's not aligned with who you are, then you're probably not going to be there very long. And that may not sound like a good thing, but I think any leader knows you don't want people who aren't aligned with the mission. The key to me is, how do you align the organizational mission with the personal mission, so that every day when people show up, they're not saying we've got this big global, goal. They're saying, for me to do my job today, I have to master stress. I have to recharge. I have to have my accountability partners. And you figure out for each organization, what does that mean for you? Which is why this is not an off-the-shelf program. We have a off-the-shelf virtual training stress mastery solution that people can take. It's fine. That's great. But like, if you're really going to integrate this, I think you've got to build it into your culture, your brand, your tribe.
You have to know where you're starting. I mean, every company's starting from a different place. But I love that where it's going is, as you said, it's kind of built into the branding of the whole thing as well, because this is who we are and this is what we're putting into the universe. And that's what I lead consciously, profit responsibly, go out into the world and kind of demonstrate your philosophy, and let your philosophy be one of your tangible takeaways.
Right. And it makes me think of all the conscious capitalism groups, all the companies that got involved with that conscious capitalism, like, who they are because you feel it. Like, they have a brand that makes you fall in love with them, because if you're aligned with that, you feel that. And obviously people want to be more productive. They want to perform more. Like, I shifted just instantly. I mean, I had Reefs before, which was kind of funny, but like, now I won't wear anything but, because it's like, I'm part of this movement now. And that's what we want from not only our employees and our colleagues, but our clients, right? We want them to feel like they're part of something bigger, that brand loyalty. And to me, it's a win-win for everybody. You just have to integrate it into something in that human element of literally human capital. Like, can we show up? Do we have the capacity to deal with the challenges in our life?
Well, on that note, I mean, we could talk about this for another hour.
I know.
Kick us off of here. So listen, first of all, I wanted to acknowledge the people who have been with us this whole time, and a few of them have been commenting. Katie talked about how it took her cancer to finally get conscious about this issue. And boy, isn't that the case? Like, sometimes we got to get sick before we actually do something. So thanks for sharing that, Katie, who then says, live with the end in mind, slow down, breathe, and don't take your phone to the loo.
That's right. There's my challenge for the week.
And then there's this guy, John Eubank. He's a smiling guy over here.
Smiling guy.
So hi, John. John is Heidi's husband.
Hi, John.
Heidi, what I want to ask you right now is how could people take working with you to the next level? Where would people go? What do you like to tell them about you?
Yeah. Thank you. Well, you can go to HeidiHanna.com, which is my website, and we actually just relaunch. So we're super excited about that. There's a lot of fun free stuff there that you can check out. And really the best thing is our Stress 360 survey. So it's at mystress360.com. And the Stress 360 survey, again, 40 simple questions. It gives you a score. It also now gives you customized training suggestions based on where you fall. You'll see where you are compared to other people. And it also is going to give you some free gifts, some free training things you can do instantly to start to feel better fast. So that's where I would tell people to start.
And may I also plug that you're starting a podcast? You want to say a couple words about that?
I am. I'll be interviewing you on my podcast tomorrow. Very excited about that. So the Stress Mastery podcast is officially launching next week. Our first guest is my good friend Yakov Smirnov, we recorded yesterday. That's going to be a lot of fun. I've got an amazing lineup, and it really is all about what the experts do personally to navigate their relationship with stress more effectively. So it's a pretty short show, but we just get right to the point, and I think a lot of practical tips people will really enjoy.
Can they find that on your website, the schedule for that?
They will be able to, and I'll tell you now, eventually HeidiHanna.com/podcast will be where people can get the show notes and the information. We're in the process of literally setting that up right now. They're editing that first episode so that it can launch next week.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks so much for that. So for those of you who are just tuning in now, you're watching Executive Zen, the show that supports you, the leader, in leading consciously and profiting responsibly. I'm Dr. Steve Taubman, and I'm going to wrap up in just a second here. I did want to mention before we wrap up that my newest book, Buddha in the Trenches, which is about this very topic, I've got a free download of the book, and I'm going to be making that offer to Heidi's audience tomorrow on my show. But I see no reason why I shouldn't make the same offer to everybody on this show. So if you go to stevetaubman.com/Heidi, you can pick that up as well. If you've enjoyed the show, please send your comments to me at stevetaubman@gmail.com, or chime in right here on Facebook and let us know what you thought. Feel free to suggest a topic if you'd like. And we always like to end our shows with a metaphor, a quote, and a challenge for the week. My metaphor for this week is the pressure cooker metaphor, which is, a little bit of pressure is good. It could cook your food. Too much pressure can explode the damn thing. So be mindful of how much pressure you're allowing yourself to experience. The quote for the day is from Hans Selye, who said, "It's not stress that kills us, it's our reaction to it." And then our challenge for the day, I always like to have our guest issue a challenge for the day. So Heidi, if you're up for it, can you share a challenge with our guest for the week?
You got it. Well, I guess kind of organically, my challenge is don't take the bathroom to the loo. But if you want a different challenge, my challenge is to create a recharge playlist. And that is find 3 songs that you like that help you feel like you're getting your energy back, maybe focusing you on an intention or inspiration, and create a playlist. Could be just 3 songs and use those throughout the day. Plug in at least 3 times today. So 3 songs, 3 times today to pause and just recharge and see how you feel.
Love it. I'm going to do that. That's a great idea. So thanks, Heidi. It's been so much fun. I really appreciate your being here. When we return next week, my guest will be Matt Lund, the Executive Director of the National Wellness Institute. Remember to tune in next week, share your thoughts, and share this with your friends, and subscribe to my podcast, and visit us on iTunes, and find me on Executive Zen right on my website. I'm Dr. Steve Taubman, and have a great week. Remember to lead consciously and profit responsibly.